Hello, thank you very much for joining our Clone to Cloud webinar today. Now, I know some of you may be here because perhaps you have a legacy system situation and you need to modernise. Perhaps it's to integrate, perhaps it's to get AI ready, perhaps it's to move away from a situation that isn't secure and is costing a lot, or perhaps you're just dealing with shadow IT, but essentially you're unsure where to start. Our objective here today in this webinar is to proffer some options to help shift the way you may be currently thinking about approaching application modernisation. Before we get started, I'd just like to introduce our speakers. First, my name is Rosalind Hames. I'm a founding member of Clear Dynamics. I have over 25 years experience with enterprise application solutions providers. I'm going to be joined by Tessa Cooper. Tessa's our head of platform and architecture at Clear Dynamics, and she's worked on some of our most complex and gnarly systems modernisation projects. She's worked across many sectors, including energy, finance, health, government, education, logistics, manufacturing, resources, and with disruptors. We're also joined by Daniel Baker, our Senior Solutions Engineer, who's lived and breathed digital transformations for more than a decade. So thank you both for joining us here today, and we really look forward to the session. Just some housekeeping. You'll see the Q&A function. We'll have our presentation. If you have any questions during the session, just pop them into that Q&A function and we'll deal with them at the end of the presentation, and I'll moderate this for the team. Now, before we dive in, I'd like to set the stage for you. The latest figures quantify technology debt problem as costing businesses $1.52 trillion US. Now, to wrap your head around this for context, the global cost of cybercrime is estimated to be in the realm of 600 billion. So we're talking about tech debt 1.52 trillion US. Gartner calls simplifying to grow a strategic imperative for the C-level at this time. And McKinsey reports the CIOs across the region estimated that tech debt soaks up between 20 and 40% of their annual budgets. So that we know that you and your teams have change fatigue as well. We've all lived it. You're no longer interested in multi-year transformation journeys. We've been there. The other challenge is, of course, generative AI becoming more and more embedded in the org. So how do you unlock data in your legacy application so that you can be AI ready, so that you can integrate, so that you can use the multiple sources of data that you have for value creation? So what do you do about this? It's a lot. It can feel overwhelming. So today we'll be unpacking the available options, and we'll shine a light as well on Clear Dynamics' innovative approach to modernisation, the clone to cloud approach. I will now hand over to Tess Cooper.
Awesome. Thanks, Ros. So as Ros said, we're going to talk about our options and actually how we go about assessing those options so as to determine sort of what's the best fit for you. So there's three key metrics that you're going to use to assess pretty much any IT investment, and system replacements, modernizations are really no different. They're security, cost, and features. And we'll break each of these down as to what you're looking for. So with security, your requirements are going to be unique to the system and to your business. So what certifications and standards do you need to comply with? Is there any sensitive data in that particular system? What about legislation and regulatory compliance for you and your industry? And there may even be additional requirements that are specific to your product or specific to your offering as well. The next one is really about cost. So it's important to make sure that you're really thinking about the holistic cost of this new system, not just the implementation of the new system, but what does that look like from a running cost perspective? What does maintenance and support look like? Who is hosting? Where is it being hosted? What are the costs going to look like for that? And what about further upgrades or improvements or enhancements over time? What does that cost profile look like too? And then the last one we're going to talk about is really about features. And this is all about not only functional fit and functional features, but also non-functional requirements too. So how fast? How responsive does the system need to be? You want to think about what integrations does it need to have or need to provide, particularly considering no system works in isolation. It's going to need to work in your ecosystem. You'll also think about, cloud providers and your cloud offering and how you want to host these kind of systems as well. So now that we've really talked about those kind of assessment metrics, what are your options and how do they measure up? So generally what you'll hear about in the market is a product offering. So how you kind of drop and shop and purchase a new product to represent that new system, or sort of bespoke build. And this can be anything from sort of lifting and shifting to fully refactoring that existing system. And those are the two standard options in the market. We'll also kind of talk about our Clear Dynamics option because we really feel like it's quite different to those two. So product. Okay, so how does product measure up against our assessment criteria? So security is always built in, and that can be a really nice thing because you need to worry less and less, and then you only really need to worry about what's specific to you. Cost profiles can be pretty intense. You're going to have implementation and license and enhancement sort of support costs, but you're also going to have a pretty high migration cost because it is very unlikely that your existing system and the product are very similar. So that migration is going to take a significant portion of the implementation and often happens after implementation as well. The other thing that product measures up against features is that you've got a pretty significant set of features. It should be fairly lengthy, but you've got low flexibility. So any customizations can really create more cost, and also some can be really difficult to implement. So when is product really a good fit for you? If you have a good functional fit and you can raise that sort of orange marker up to a green, then product's actually a pretty good choice for your system replacement. Now, what about bespoke build? So when it comes to bespoke build, the security is very manual. So everything has to be essentially custom built every time from a security perspective. And that can be pretty stressful, and especially if you've got a large number of compliances that you've got to do. With a cost profile, you've got implementation costs and run costs, but you'll really need to think about maintenance cost. Who is supporting this system? Is it internal? Is it external? Are you using a different vendor? And what does that cost profile look like to maintain this system over time? The great thing about bespoke, however, is the features. So you really have maximum flexibility of the feature set and of what features you want to put into your new system. So naturally, picking bespoke is usually a better choice when you have really specific requirements or a really, really unique business unit or a really unique business proposition, or, you've got a really strong desire to differentiate by to your customers and in the market using this piece of software. So those are all great, but what about the Clear Dynamics solution? We really feel like there has to be a better way than trading off really between a kind of security and feature set. And so we really wanted to be able to try and find a solution that allows you to get better results in all of those categories. So at Clear Dynamics, we use the AEOS platform, and that means the security is built in. So we've actually built the security in that's automatically generated as part of that profile. So very similar to, the security profile of a product. Then with cost, while you'll have, the implementation costs tend to be lower because of our platform. And then you've also got lower migration costs. We've spent a long time and a lot of effort making sure that migration doesn't slow you down. And so those two things make for a much better cost profile compared to comparison. And then feature, we really wanted to make sure that the features were highly flexible and that is exactly how you're going to deliver exactly what you want. And so overall, we really think it's going to take sort of the best of both options and give you exactly what you want. Now, I'm sure at this point, you're saying, how on earth is that possible? And so I'm going to hand over to Dan, and he's going to talk a little bit more about AEOS as a platform and our clone to cloud approach. Yeah, Dan.
Thank you, Tessa. So yeah, I'm going to take you through Clone to Cloud and how it works as part of a demonstration. If there's one thing that I'd like you to take away from this webinar and from this demonstration, it's how quickly and how easily you can migrate legacy applications or legacy processes to a modern tech stack running on a cloud-based architecture. So for today, we're going to be following in the footsteps of a fake tertiary education institution called Unitech. They have a student eligibility portal or process for scholarships that they want to modernize. So right now it's a partly paper-based process, partly digital process where students apply for scholarships and then the university works out whether they're eligible. So they want to transform that into a fully digital application that's secure, compliant, and cloud-based. And this is all part of a larger digital transformation program that they're running. And this is what a couple of their, on the left-hand side, that's what a couple of their existing applications look like. And on the right-hand side, after they've finished this process, after engaging with Clear Dynamics, that's what their new set of applications will look like. So where we're going to start is here. This is a blank application that we're going to start with for Unitech. It's really just a shell. You can log into this application. There's a couple of admin screens and there's nothing else there. And we're going to turn this into their scholarship application engine. And in order to do that, we're going to head over to our portal called AEOS. So AEOS is where we can configure the forms, we can configure like the data models, the security, we can inject custom code, we can configure the layout. But for Clone to Cloud, what we're actually going to do is take their existing data models and then automatically regenerate all of that in their new application. So to do that, I'm going to come down here and click on Clone to Cloud. And for today's demonstration, I'm going to be using a data dictionary in an Excel file, but we can also support a number of different sort of direct database connections, API connections as well. So I'm going to click on Upload File and Generate Clone. And so what this is doing, and in fact, what I'll do is I'll show you that file now. So this is a copy of the file that I've just uploaded. So you can see down here, we have a number of different data models that we want to create within the application and all of the different fields that need to be within those data models. We also have some layout instructions and some data sources and lookup data as well. And so that process has been complete. So we have actually ingested that data dictionary. And you can see down here in the forms, we've created, the relevant data models that we need for this application. We've also updated the layout. And what I will also do while I'm in the layout page here is I do just want to upload a little logo to make their site look a little bit nicer. And while we're at it, we may as well give it a nice name. Scholarships. There we go. We might give it a nice name as well. And so now that we've configured all of that, I guess we're going to build the application. So let's click on Build Dynamic Site. So what this is doing, this is taking all of the configuration that we've pulled out of that data dictionary, along with the little layout and website name changes that I made, and we're going to rebuild the application with all of that. We can actually watch that happening live over here. So I'm going to turn over here and we can watch that live. So this is actually building the UI front end. It's building the backend APIs and the backend application. It's setting up the database, and it's doing all of that in our cloud architecture. Now, while that's running, we might actually take a step back and go back to the slides. And I want to just have a quick chat about the entire sort of clone to cloud process. So it is a 3-step process that we'll be going through. Step 1, data ingestion. This is what we've just started on now. So the first step is that we ingest the existing data structure from your legacy application. So for Unitech, they've provided this data dictionary. We've been able to take that and break that down. We've transformed it into our unified data model, and then we've put that into the application. The next step after that is going to be data migration, and we will go through this as well. That's taking their existing data set. For today, I'm going to be using an Excel dump of their existing data, but obviously when we're connecting to live systems, we would connect directly to their database and import the data from there. Once we've done that, we've kind of got a fully functioning application. In terms of all the data fields exist, all the data is there, but what we need to do is create the business rules associated with that data. And we do this, we have two separate AI and machine learning mechanisms where we can do that in an automated fashion. So first, under data-based discovery, what we do is once you've imported the data into the application, we run machine learning models on that data to identify how that's changed over time. So for Unitech, in this example, what we're going to be doing is trying to determine, are there fields or are there attributes in our data that can determine whether or not a student is eligible for a scholarship? And can we do that in an automated fashion? So that's step A there. And for step B, we have built a number of different tools and capabilities around LLMs and generative AI. And what it allows us to do is inspect the existing application where it exists and basically pull out any additional rules or edge cases that may be present in that application that we haven't picked up as part of the first step. And we take these two different steps and automatically generate the rules within the application. Now, step 3 here, polish and uplift. When we work with organizations and they've been on legacy tech platforms for a while, there's often been a lot of restrictions around what new capabilities they can build. Once you've migrated to a modern tech stack and you're using a powerful platform like AEOS to manage and maintain that tech stack, you're suddenly able to deliver a lot more features. And sometimes it's just sort of the click of a button. You can deliver a lot more features than you could before. So we do work with customers to kind of understand what are the things that you would like to be able to do once you're in a better place, and then work to sort of add those to the application as well. Now, the last thing I'll add here is that no modern application really gets deployed today without integration into at least a couple of different systems, whether or not they're internal or external systems. So we have over 60 pre-built connectors that we can just turn on, and that'll start the integration between your new application and these connectors. And we also work with organizations to build custom integrations to internal systems that they may have as well. And we are adding to this list of integrations every day. So I might pause there on the slides and head back across to our application. And you can see here that it's done. So it's completed that process. And so now what we can do is, if I refresh the page here, what you'll see is that it has created the forms required based on the data model that we provided. So under scholarship applications here, I can add a new scholarship application. And you can see if I try and save, it's got all the validations automatically applied. So, required fields, conditional required fields, any other sort of validation that you've set will automatically be applied here. And so what I can do is I can actually go ahead and import our data. So I'll click upload and upload this one and click import. So what that's doing, that's taking all of our existing organizational data and creating all these scholarship applications that Unitech already had and populating them in our new application. So if we now come back here to scholarship applications, you can see we now have lots of applications here. We can open them up. And another principle that we operate by is returning the ability for business users to be able to complete business tasks and removing that workload from developers or technical users. So this, frees up technical resources or developers from needing to make mundane changes, and it empowers business users to be able to do their job effectively. So as an example here, we have a country drop down. And so in this instance, Unitec were only accepting scholarship applications from students who were in Australia, Brazil, and China. But now that we've built this new application, they can come if the business decides they want to accept scholarships from, say, students in New Zealand. We can add New Zealand in there as a country. And then when we come back into our scholarship applications, you can see that that's been added to the drop down there. So at this point, we could almost say, well, job done. We've got an entirely digital portal to manage scholarships. I could create a role so that students could log in and just be able to submit new scholarship applications. And then I could make another role for admin staff to be able to review those applications and then set the eligibility. But we obviously want to take this a step further and see if we can automate some of that process as well. So to do that, we're going to head into our workflow portal. So this is where we can, oh, sorry, I've got Teams coming up in the way, but I'll get through that. There we go. So this is where we can basically run our machine learning models across the data that we've imported. And we can also set up business rules for how we want to handle different things within the system. So right here, this is where we're actually going to set up a regression model running across the data. So for our feature columns, so I guess taking a step back, what we want to do is we want to determine whether or not a student is eligible for a scholarship based on the other data that they've provided. So for our feature columns, we want everything except eligibility. And then for our target column, the thing that we're trying to work out the value of, we're going to just set that as eligibility. And then we'll say fit. So this is now running a linear regression across this, and we can see that it has come up with two different rules here, possible rules for determining whether or not the student is eligible based on the data we've provided. A couple of things to just fine tune this model. One is that you can see down here with the rules, gender is not mentioned here in any of these rules. So it's probably something we would remove if we were going to refine this. Another thing is that machine learning models like this work a lot better with Boolean data, like true or false. And you can see that it's actually produced one rule for age is less than or equal to 25.5 and another less than or equal to 20. So we can actually improve this by removing age as well. And instead, we're going to be using this Boolean value of less than 26, which is representative of whether or not a student's age is less or greater than 26. So if we run this again, we'll see that it generates a couple of other rules here. Now, what we're really looking for is a rule where the absolute value is its greatest. So within the coefficient column here. So this particular rule here, this has the highest absolute value. So that's probably the one that we're going to look most closely at. We can actually also do a data visualization of this data. So when we run that, what we can see is that there are many different pathways here where students are not eligible for a scholarship. And you can see them all here. But there is only one pathway here where students are actually eligible for scholarships. So that is where they are studying full-time, they are a citizen or have permanent residency, and they are 26 years or less for their age. So this actually exactly matches this particular rule here. And so what we can do now that we've identified that yes, we do want to apply this rule, we can tick that and we can click generate workflow. Now what that's going to do, that's going to automatically create the rules within the system such that if an application, a scholarship application is created and the user is less than 26, they're a citizen and they're studying full time, the system will automatically mark them as eligible for a scholarship. So that wraps up the demonstration portion of this webinar. In 15, 20 minutes, I've been able to create an entirely new application, run some data modeling across that application, and then generate some automated rules on it. It's obviously a little bit of a contrived example where we were able to do that so quickly. But just to give you an idea, when we talk to many organizations, they'll be saying, look, we've got a modernization project. It's looking to take maybe 12 to 18 months to uplift a number of applications. After talking to us and after we scope it out a little bit, those timelines move down to maybe 2 or 3 months rather than 12 to 18 months. So with that in mind, I will hand back to Roz.
That concludes our presentation. So we now invite you to ask your questions. There's a little Q&A icon that you can see. If you can click on that and you can pop your questions in the chat. Someone's asked, what happens if my data is messy or old?
Yeah, so I mean, everyone's data is messy and old. That's sort of the nature of replacing them. So it's really important for us to be able to, ingest data exactly the way that it is. And you would have seen that Dan really ingested the spreadsheet as it was. We didn't do anything to manipulate it at the beginning. And so it's really important that we do that. And then it means that we can migrate successfully. And then anything that needs validation or needs cleaning up happens inside the system once it's landed there. There's very, of course, sometimes, if it was, heaven forbid, a text file or something, we may actually do a little bit of transformation logic between target and source kind of scenario to get it in there. But we I don't think we've ever done like proper pre-cleansing before actually uploading anything into the system. So no need to stress about messy old data.
Another similarly related question, what types of databases can be ingested?
Yeah, so you might have noticed when Dan was going through the demo actually, and he picked the data dictionary, there's actually quite a lot of different databases there. So you will have seen a couple of different SQL ones, so PostgreSQL, MS SQL, Oracle, and we've also done Access and DB2, and we're always adding to that list. So no need to stress either. If your database wasn't on that list, we can always work towards adding it in there as well.
Great. Another question, what legacy languages do you modernise?
Yeah, so basically, Dan talked about this a little bit in the slides around how we use sort of AI/ML to analyze code, and those are largely through large language models. So actually it's pretty good at just about any coding language, just because it's primarily based on the ones that it's been trained on. So the languages that have existed for longer actually have more training data. So you'd actually have more trouble doing it with a newer system or a newer language than you do with an older language. So not really any particular languages that we can't do. You'll just get better results with things that are actually older rather than something that was invented yesterday.
Another question, do you only ingest data or can you ingest algorithms or formulas? And if so, how would this work?
Yeah, so the algorithms and formulas stuff kind of happens through those analytics that we talked about. So if we had source code, you absolutely can take the algorithms and formulas inside of the source code itself using that large language model I was just talking about. And so you'd use that to actually ascertain what the business rule is. And you'd actually create it in the workflow portal that Dan showed earlier. If, however, the logic and algorithms happen to be in a spreadsheet or in the database itself, then we just have to, there's a different sort of way of isolating them and getting a better overview of the process itself. And they'll always pretty much end up in that workflow portal regardless. It's a little bit less automated because every spreadsheet is different, and that can make it a little bit more challenging to actually directly ingested. So it still has a huge amount of automation in terms of the tooling. We're not actually coding it per se, but extracting it automatically is a little bit more challenging if it's sort of a macro in a spreadsheet, so to speak.
Thanks, Tess. Any other questions? They're great questions. Feel free to forward any further questions through to us if you'd like more of a detailed look at the approach as it stands next to your scenario and what you're grappling with, what you're leaning into. Do get in touch. Thank you very much for joining today. It's great having you all on the call, And we will follow this up with the recording of the webinar as well. Thank you for joining. Bye.